So if anyone doesn't know me, my name is Jennifer from Three Rivers Library, and I am super excited to introduce Jez Lehman, who is going to be presenting Astrology 101.
All right, thank you. So my name is Jez. I am a librarian, public speaker, and job coach because I don't know how to use free time. Astrology is something I've been studying for many years now, and I always find it very fascinating. So pretty much any new hobby, I end up turning into a class because I just love sharing that knowledge. So I'm hoping to do that with you tonight. If you have made your own natal chart online before, you can use that, follow along. You don't need it. I do have a link on here where I've put together some resources and some worksheets for you, but you can look at them afterwards. You do not need them to follow along. Come on. There we go. So what is astrology? You hear a lot of people say that astrology is, ridiculous because you can't break down all of humanity into only 12 kinds of people. And I completely agree with that because astrology is so much more complicated than that. What you hear when most people think astrology is actually star sign astrology. So that just focuses on your sun, which is also sometimes called your star. So star sign, sun sign, they're the same. It only looks at where the sun was when you were born, but there are other planets too. So your natal chart, which I'll show you in a moment, uses your sun sign, which is represents your purpose, creative power, and driving forces. It's kind of who you are at your core. Your moon sign, because in astrology, we do count the moon as a planet. This is kind of your inner emotional self, who you are to yourself. And then we have something called the ascendant or rising sign, which I will explain later. But it's how we present ourselves to the world. How do other people see us? These together are considered like your big three of astrology. But astrology is still more than that. So it's your sun sign, your moon sign, it's all of the planets except Earth because we can't see Earth in the sky when we are standing on it. And then we have something called houses, which is where the planets are in the sky. And then there are all kinds of other things that we're not going to cover because I am a librarian and I am not a mathematician, and there's a lot of math involved later on. So we're just going to go over the planets, and then I'm going to touch on the houses a little bit. I'm hoping to give you just enough to be dangerous and to be able to understand your own chart. So what is a natal chart? Here on the right, you can see, this is actually my chart. So your natal chart is at the time and place you were born. If you look up, where are the planets in the sky? Where, whether you can see them or not, where were they at any given time? And each of those falls into one of 12 signs. And to figure out what planets are in which sign, all you have to do, pen working here, you're going to find that symbol, and hopefully whichever site you use to make them will give you a key explaining what the symbols are. The sun is a circle with a dot in the middle. So I would find the sun, and then you draw a line straight, that's not straight, straight out. And whatever sign it intersects, that is the sign that rules over that planet. So for me, my sun is in Leo. So if someone were to ask me, what's your sign? I would probably say Leo because that is my sun or star sign. And then the moon is very easy to find because it looks like a moon. It's a little crescent moon here. And again, you just draw a line straight out, and whatever it goes through on the outermost circle, that is what your moon sign would be. So for me, it's Libra. If you have a planet that is directly in the middle of two signs, some people call that, they say that they're on the cusp. Cusps don't exist. I know it's a very common thing, but in real astrology, that's just not a thing. So here, if my moon were to be on that line between Libra and Scorpio, that would actually be 0 degrees Scorpio. So your chart is always going to start here on the left with that straight line. And that darker line is always going to be straight across, horizontal, and that splits our chart in half. We have a line that goes through vertically, but it's not always straight up and down. Sometimes it's at an angle, which mine here is. So we want to focus on the horizontal line, and then we go through our chart counterclockwise, and that's the order of the planets. So if we go back to this line here between Libra and Scorpio, whatever the next sign is, that is where that would be. So that would be 0 degrees Scorpio. This will make a little bit more sense as we go along. I'm going to explain what each of these mean, but this is just a basic how to figure out which planets are in which signs. So that's going to help us figure out the meaning of them. So if we were to continue on here, Mercury for me is in Virgo. I actually have 3 planets in Virgo. If you have 3 or more planets in one sign, it's called a stellium. I have 2 of them. It's not, unusual. It's still fairly common, but most people do not have even 1 stellium in their chart. And that just means that I have a little bit more energy focused in that area. So for me, it's Virgo and Capricorn. I'll explain what those mean, but mostly it means that I'm very organized and I plan too far ahead. But let's move on to what these things mean. So if you were to make a list of all of the planets and which sign they fall into in your chart, each of those planets has an element, a mode or modality, and a polarity. So they all have these different characteristics. And if you add them up, you can see, okay, well, I have mostly fire or mostly earth. It's just, you can have even amounts of 2 of them, but it's just a kind of overall look. We're going to go from the macro and we'll go down. So to figure out the different characteristics here, you're going to either follow it to the left to see the mode or the element, or you go up to, see the element or the polarity on the left there, and you go up to see the mode. So in this case, Leo would be a fire sign. It's a fixed sign, and it's also positive. So starting with the elements, if you are someone that has a lot of fire in your natal chart, you might be seen as being bold and dramatic. You have a lot of energy. You're very determined and focused. You have a very strong sense of purpose in your life, but you're also very good at lifting up others. You have a lot of earth in your chart. You're very solid, grounded, practical. I like to say, think of down to earth. Kind of connects pretty well there. This is someone who likes to make plans. They're not very sentimental, but they're very good at making decisions. Air, I like to say this is someone with their head in the clouds, but their feet on the ground. So they're not totally disconnected. They do have a lot of ideas and thoughts. They're very imaginative. They love to talk, but they're also very rational and emotionally restrained. Ultimately, what an air sign wants is a polite and civilized society. They want everyone to follow the rules and be happy. And then water, I like to tell people to think about tears. I say this mostly because I have almost no water in my chart. I am not an emotional person. But if you have a lot of water in your chart, you're probably a very emotional and intuitive person, and you act according to your feelings. You might have trouble making decisions sometimes, but this is kind of the, people think that the opposite of water is fire. In astrology, it's actually a little bit more about earth, and then fire and air are opposites. But we don't need to know that part actually. So if we look at the mode, your mode is basically what time of year did your sign fall into. So a cardinal sign, this is the beginning of a season. The celestial calendar starts with the spring equinox. So it starts at kind of the end of March with Aries. So we'll talk about spring, beginning of spring. This is the start of the season. Things are starting to change, starting to get in that spring thoughts. This is someone who takes initiative. They hate following someone else's plans. They prefer to lead the way by showing you how to do it. They're not going to wait around for someone else. They usually have a lot of new ideas, but they might have trouble balancing all of them. They might take on too much. And then we moved into fixed signs. Now, fixed sign is in the very middle of a season. So it's firmly fixed in where it is. It's not, close to the beginning of the season. It's not kind of wintry, and it's not quite summer. So this is right in the middle of the season. This is usually someone who's very persistent, stubborn. They're not good with change. They're very good at providing stability, but sometimes that can make it hard for them to move on. And then after that, we have mutable signs, which is the end of a season. So we'd be moving out of spring, things are starting to warm up, we're starting to see some greenery, we're moving towards summer, but we're not quite there yet. So this would be a mutable sign. And this is someone who is unfocused, but very good with change. They're very adaptable, they go with the flow. They might give up a little bit too easily in some cases, but they're not nearly as stubborn as a fixed sign. And then the polarity, it's either positive or negative. These are not judgment calls. It's not, a good sign or a bad sign. It's more about where do you put your energy. So fire signs are positive. They put their energy into the world. They focus outwards. Whereas a negative sign is a little bit more introverted. They focus their energy inwards, more on the self rather than presenting themselves to the world. So this is just an overall, if you add up how many of your signs are in a certain element or in a different mode, it gives you a very broad idea of what your chart might look like. And now we're going to go into the planets themselves. I'm going to tell you what those things mean. We're going to start with the inner planets. So that is the sun through Saturn. And again, we include the moon. So your sun is your identity and your life purpose. It is who you are at your core. Your moon sign is about instinct and protection. It's your emotional self. That is kind of who you are to yourself, who you are when you're by yourself, alone. Mercury is all about communication and learning. Venus, most people can usually tell you that it's about love and pleasure. This also includes aesthetics. So you're going to get things like art and fashion as well. Mars is a god of war. So it's all about assertion and action. It's making decisions. Jupiter is about growth and opportunity. And then Saturn, I kind of refer to as like the parent planet. It's all about authority and maturity. And we'll get into the outer planets later. Those are a little bit different because they're so far away from Earth and they take so long to get around the sun that they don't really influence any one person, but they influence a generation as a whole. So we're going to start with the inner planets, and then later we'll go into the outer planets. What I'm going to do is I'll have 2 slides for each sign. The first one will be all about the sun sign in that, and then the other ones I'll show you what that sign means with the other inner planets. So we always start with Aries, beginning of spring, first one in the celestial calendar. The ruling planet is Mars, which I mentioned is a god of war. Aries is very competitive. They need to be first out of the gates. They're a cardinal sign. They're very competitive. They know exactly what they want. They're very focused. They prefer to call the shots. They want to be in charge. They're not going to listen to anyone else's direction. So sometimes they may prefer to work alone rather than try to be held back by anyone else. They do like risk taking. They see danger as a way of proving themselves, that if they can survive this, that's where they put their worth sometimes. And again, that can come in different ways with the competition. It doesn't have to be literal danger, but they are very clear-headed and they can think quickly in an emergency. So they're good to have around. If your moon is in Aries, you are someone who can't be held back. You're not going to wait for others. You show caring for others by helping them gain their independence. So you're not really going to spend your time feeding someone fish, but you're happy to teach them how to fish so that they can do it on their own. Most likely you will probably have them watch you fish and learn that way, but you're happy to help other people gain their own independence. You'll see a lot of similar themes from the sun sign. This is just how they play out in different areas of your life. So that's the emotions. When it comes to Mercury and communication, Aries is all about clear thinking. They're very decisive. They're direct. They don't use a lot of flowery language. They're not going to hide their meaning. Venus, when it comes to a relationship, they love dating. They like the chase of it, and they will generally be the person to make the first move. Mars and Aries can be very single-minded, forceful, and direct. Jupiter, you motivate others by paving the way. So again, it's I'm going to go forth and succeed, and I'm going to set a good example that will inspire all of you to do the same. Saturn, this is someone who achieves through tests of courage and strength. Again, competition, they like to prove themselves, but they're also very disciplined people. So your Olympic athletes might have their Saturn in Aries. Moving on to Taurus. So this is towards the end of April into the end of May. I do have the dates on here, but they do change a little bit year to year, just based on, is it a leap year? Where, when are the equinoxes? It doesn't fit quite into our calendar. But generally it's, April 21st, 22nd, somewhere around there. The ruling planet of Taurus is Venus. And like you said, Venus is about love, but it's also just about the senses. And that is huge for Taurus. Everything to them is about the senses. They're very connected to the physical world. This is someone who really enjoys a good meal, someone who probably has lots of comfy blankets and pillows all over the house. They really like comfort. They take pleasure in that. They are a earth sign, so they like to have something long lasting. They're very calm, measured, reserved people. They're grounded and slow to anger, but because of that, they're also terrible at change. And, Taurus is the bull. You can kind of think of that once they pick a path, they're going to stick to it. It's kind of a slow and steady. They're not good at letting go of things. They can be very stubborn, but they're also very good with money. If your moon is in Taurus, You probably take things very calmly at your own pace, and you give extra attention to the basic needs. So you're not going to worry about all the little details. You're going to focus on, okay, where am I getting my next meal? If you're going on vacation, their focus is going to be more on, where are we staying? How comfy is it? How long is the drive? They're not going to worry about all of the little details about what they need to pack or anything like that. Mercury, you can't push a Taurus into a decision. They do need to look at the details. They need the whole picture. They're not going to be rushed into anything. They don't make any kind of snap judgments. Venus, again, the ruling planet of Taurus, they're all about the senses, and they do need a lot of physical affection. So their love language is most likely touch. With Mars, they're very persistent people. They, don't start fights. They usually let things just go along, things roll off their back. But when a Taurian Mars is mad at you, you are in trouble because they've just been letting all of that build up, possibly for years, until they just explode. Jupiter, this is someone who prefers to make their own luck, mostly through patience. So they're going to achieve by, kind of putting their nose to the grindstone and sticking with something rather than taking any kind of chances. They need to measure success in real world terms. They need to see the flowers of the seeds they've planted, essentially. They need to be able to put in the work and see something physically or in the real world that shows that they've done something. So sometimes that is, how much money you have in your bank account. That's something you can track. It might be, owning certain things. There's all kinds of examples here. Saturn, they're very patient people. I mentioned in other things, they're very slow and steady wins the race. And they create security for themselves by conserving resources. So again, not someone who's really going to take a lot of chances on things, and they're not going to do any impulse buys in the grocery store. Gemini, the ruling planet is Mercury, which is all about communication, and that is a huge thing for Gemini. Gemini is an air sign, and they love to talk. The symbol for Gemini is the twins. Now, some people think that this means Geminis are two-faced. I like to think of it more as a 2-for-1 deal, that it's not that they are two different people. It's more that you see two sides to someone. We all have different characteristics inside of us, but we may not show them to the world as often. And that's what you get with Gemini. You can also just think about communication, like the two twins talking to each other and sharing experiences. So Gemini is a master networker. They're never going to stay in one job for too long. They think that is boring. They hate stability. They think it's a trap. And basically boring is the worst thing you could be for a Gemini. You have to be interesting. They're always learning something new. They're always changing their environment, moving up. And a lot of that is through networking because they've met so many people and they're very good at conversation. They're social butterflies. They're also usually very witty. They're really good with words because, again, communication. And they're not really in touch with their emotions very much. This is an air sign. They're not really too close with those things. If your moon is in Gemini, you are someone who is constantly learning. You probably love reading and you really love talking. Mercury, you're someone who always has a witty retort and you have a lot of different interests. You just love learning and it doesn't really matter what it's about. When it comes to a relationship, communication is everything, but you need to give a Gemini their space. If you start to get too serious too quickly, they will feel trapped, they'll feel suffocated. They need their space. So give them a little bit more time. They will come to you. With a Mars, when it comes to a fight, words are your weapons. You might be, a great debater. You might be a lawyer. You like to keep things interesting too. So sometimes you like to stir the pot just a little bit. When it comes to Jupiter, you have enthusiasm for learning about anything. Again, it doesn't matter the topic, you love learning. And this is generally someone who has a lot of random facts. They know a little bit about everything. Saturn in Gemini, these are people who are drawn to careers that require very technical knowledge. They're also more likely to speak multiple languages. Cancer, we're moving into summer now. The ruling planet is the moon, which is all about emotions. And that is a huge thing for Cancer. The symbol for Cancer is the crab. I've always considered that pretty apt. They have this hard outer shell. They look tough, but inside they're pretty soft. They like to put up a good front, but ultimately they're not going to engage in a fight if they don't have to. They need security. They're not going to take unnecessary risk with anything. A big thing for Cancer is relationships. So they need to form close bonds with family and friends, and their friends essentially are their family, that you can be very close with a Cancer. They can't bear to lose anyone or anything. So this is your one friend who is still in touch with everyone that you went to high school with. They also might be a little bit of a hoarder. It's not about being messy. It's not about owning things. It's that everything they have has a story attached to it. It's like, oh, this is from, this moment, and this reminds me of this person. That's why they won't give things away. They are very sensitive and intuitive people, incredibly empathic, very nurturing. They're always happy to help, but they will not be told what to do. In fact, if you tell a Cancer what to do, they will probably go out of their way to either not do it or do the opposite. But if they just see a need, they're very happy to help. This is someone who acts on instinct, and they will withdraw into their shell at the first sign of danger. So again, they're not really going to engage in any kind of danger here. If your moon is in Cancer, which is ruled by the moon, you have very deep instincts to nurture and protect yourself and others. Your feelings come and go like the tide, but they're incredibly powerful. So you have a lot of emotions about a lot of things. When it comes to Mercury, you probably have a really great memory, and you just absorb information. You probably like history class the best, not because of the dates or people, but because it's all about story. Venus, you're very sentimental people, and again, your friends become your family, that you just form very close bonds with everyone around you. You probably don't have one single best friend. You probably have a lot of people around you. Mars, this is someone who's not going to stand up for themselves. They're not going to fight, but if somebody else is being threatened, especially someone who can't stand up for themselves, Cancer will absolutely step in and fight for them. They're willing to protect other people, but they themselves kind of just let the situation go. This is someone who will take the most indirect route possible. They are not a point A to B kind of person. They're all over the map. Do not let them drive on a road trip. Jupiter, they are happiest when they feel safe. You'll notice that safety and stability is very important to Cancer, whatever planet it is. So they're happiest when they feel safe, and especially when they can take care of other people. Again, very nurturing. And Saturn, Saturn's authority kind of turns that into a sense of duty or responsibility. Middle of summer, we've got Leo. The ruling planet of Leo is the sun, so they are literally the center of the universe. We have reason for thinking this. Leo gets a bad reputation for being very self-centered or arrogant. Generally, a Leo is a very warm, bright, charismatic person. They're generous and optimistic. They like to be a little bit regal and dignified, and if you treat them like royalty, they'll be very happy with you. But all of that, they do like themselves, but more of it is they're going to lift up everyone else around them too, because they have such great confidence and they want everybody else to feel that confidence also. They want everyone to love themselves as much as Leo loves themselves. So they're very good at hyping up other people and trying to raise them up. They're also very honorable and honest people. Integrity is very big for them. And they can get a little too self-centered sometimes, and pride will probably be Leo's downfall. It can be hurt fairly easily. If your moon is in Leo, you are naturally connected to your creative talents and you want to help others succeed. You do, however, need a little bit of love and praise in order to feel comfortable with yourself. You kind of seek that approval from outside, not really within. A big thing for Leo, again, I know Leo gets a bad reputation for being self-centered, pride is their thing, the lion is the symbol, but ultimately the biggest thing for Leo is creativity. And I don't think a lot of people realize that. And that will come out in a lot of different ways. For Mercury, Leo is very extroverted and confident. They're great speakers and they connect with people so easily. I have a friend that even before I did his chart, I could have told him he is a Leonian Mercury, because I went to his birthday party one time and started talking to other people. I was like, oh, how do you know Zach? They're like, oh, I was the cashier when he came into the shop down the street. That was the only way that they'd known them. But he became friends with them and invited them to his party because he just makes friends everywhere he goes. When it comes to Venus, this is someone who loves luxury and they dress to impress. They really like, fine goods. They like good things. Their love language is probably gifts. Mars, they are very gallant and heroic. They're very good leaders and they especially love sports. So if you are looking for someone to captain your soccer team, look for your Leonian Mars. They probably have both of those qualities. Jupiter, they're very warm people, but they also like to put on a show, like a really big show. They like the attention, they like the spectacle of things. And then Saturn, which again is kind of your parent planet, they take that creativity, they focus on that, and they use it to achieve long-term results. They're not really worried about having a big spectacle or anything in the moment. They're going to focus more on that creative aspect. Virgo's ruling planet is Mercury. And in this case, it's less about talking and more about organization. So Virgo is someone who everything has a place and everything needs to be in its place. They need order and function and practicality. The same friend who invites everyone to his birthday party, his son is in Virgo. And I know this because he cleans my house when he's here, which is why I love to invite him over. But he's someone who, if something's out of order, he'll, fix it a little bit or just, clear up the clutter. Because they need order and function and practicality just to, have thinking space, essentially. That's when they feel most comfortable. Virgos are very happy to be part of a team. They like to contribute to something bigger than themselves, something constructive. They are not going to take the lead. They do not like the spotlight. In fact, they are very happy part of a team. They like to be kind of the worker bees. They will do things simply because they need to be done. You don't have to ask them to do it, and they're not going to complain about it either. It's okay, this thing needs to be done and someone has to do it, so it may as well be me. They are a little bit perfectionist though. They can get lost in the details of things. And because of that, Virgo needs some time to process any information. They're not going to be rushed into any kind of quick decision. This is an earth sign similar to Taurus. You're not going to rush them into anything. But they're always very willing to help and humble and self-effacing, very down-to-earth people. If your moon is in Virgo, you are a practical caretaker. And again, you complete tasks without much fuss. Kind of a, I'm going to do it because it needs to be done. Mercury in Virgo, this is someone who loves classification systems and organization, which is why you find a lot of Virgo Mercuries in libraries, myself included. They also like crafts and DIY. This is less about the creative aspects as it is doing something with your hands, something practical and kind of that real world connection also. When it comes to Venus, they're not very flashy people, but they do like something that's very well made. Part of that, again, comes back to practicality. It's also good money sense. They want something that will last. And their love language is most likely acts of service. They're going to do things for you because they care. Mars, these are very practically minded people. They like making and fixing things. So their career may end up being some kind of engineer or craftsman. Jupiter, they have very close attention to detail and they succeed through hard work. They're also very charitable. And then Saturn, they like to develop a high level of expertise in their work by really focusing on the details, doing everything with care and precision. Libra, the ruling planet is Venus, and these are very poised, graceful people. They're also very tactful and diplomatic. It is an air sign. And Libra is represented by the scales of justice. So they want everything to be in peaceful balance. They also like people to follow the rules. So you get the justice thing both ways there. These are people who might get lonely fairly easily. They do need a lot of love and affection from a motivating partner. So, similar to Cancer, they need a little bit of outside approval in order to feel secure in themselves. Libra is very strongly attached to the idea of fairness, and they will go to war against someone who does not follow the rules. The best careers for a Libra are a lawyer, social worker, or counselor, because they do like to help people. They like to even the playing field, but they're also going to argue a lot of these things. Venus, remember, is also about aesthetics. So Libra loves art and beauty, but their beauty is not always sincere. They care more about the way things look than the way they actually are. So, people think that Gemini is two-faced. I'm not saying Libra is two-faced, but they definitely put on a mask. And sometimes what you see is not always what's happening below the surface. If your moon is in Libra, you are someone who requires a lot of calm and peace. You create strong relationships and you don't do well on your own for very long. Again, you kind of need that outside approval. Mercury, you're very tactful and diplomatic people. You also have that communication aspect with Mercury and the air signs that you can be very charming and persuasive. You're very good with language. You do like to make sure everyone gets a chance to speak. So this is someone I would put in charge of a meeting that sometimes you need to make a decision, but if you need everyone to voice their opinion, this is who you want in charge. Venus, they win people over with their charm and grace. They also have very good manners. Mars, these are people who are angered by issues of unfairness, whether they are real or just perceived. They assert themselves through charm, not brawn. So they're not going to get in a fist fight, but they could probably take you on in a courtroom. Jupiter, they grow through thoughtful exchange with others. They like very deep conversation. They also like to travel, and they would do really well in a career requiring social skills. And then Saturn, they're all about upholding the principles of equality. They're very fair and impartial judges. Scorpio, kind of moving from end of October into November, in the fall now. Ruling planets are Mars and Pluto. It has 2 ruling planets, and they are both gods of war. And Scorpio is definitely a very intense sign. Most people forget that Scorpio is a water sign. So they have a lot of emotions. Everything feels very strongly, very strong intuition. But again, they are intense. They're very passionate, but they're also complex and resilient. Similar to Cancer, the crab, our Scorpion here, it's going to kind of draw into itself when things get tough. It's not going to automatically rush into battle. They will do anything to avoid showing their emotions, despite being a water sign and having nothing but emotions. They really keep everything close, play everything close to the vest, keep it all locked inside. They have a sixth sense for finding out the truth, and they get immediately to the heart of the matter. They're not going to be stopped by any kind of extra details. They're not going to be distracted. They have a lot of self-control and a lot of willpower. They would rather die than admit defeat. They're very competitive, and their whole thing is that they can survive anything. That's really what they take their worth from, is that whatever they've gone through, that's their badge of honor. Scorpios do not forgive, and they do not forget. Betrayal is the ultimate sin, and their first instinct will be revenge, not out of any kind of malice, but because it is the only way they know to control a situation. Scorpio is another sign that tends to get a bad reputation, and some of this sounds bad, but really, Scorpios just kind of want to be loved, to be honest. They're very tough on the outside, but it's just that they feel everything so strongly. If you have your moon in Scorpio, you're someone for whom emotions run very deep. You tend to hold on to hurt for too long. You can't really let things go, but you can manage some of these very intense emotions with physical exercise. For Mercury, this is someone who, again, gets to the heart of the matter. They're very good detectives. They like to research and determine everyone's motivations. Why are you doing what you're doing? They also like to say that they say what everyone else is thinking, but is too afraid to say out loud. They are not afraid to be that person. When a Scorpio falls in love, they fall really hard because, again, they feel things very intensely. So for them, relationships are a very passionate affair, but they have to be built on trust because, again, they do not forgive and they do not forget. Betrayal is the ultimate sin. Mars, I mentioned already, Scorpio, has that hard outer shell, but they generally withdraw when it comes to a fight. But you have to remember, Scorpio still has that stinger. So if they feel that someone's getting too close or someone is going to move against them, they will strike out. So generally, you have to let Scorpio come to you. Very similar to Gemini, they don't let someone get too close. They don't want to show those emotions or share them. Also, they can endure anything. Scorpio's whole thing is survival. Jupiter, this is someone who's very passionate and unshakable in their beliefs. They are not superficial. And then Saturn's maturity takes all of that passion of Scorpio and turns it into authority. usually based on things that they've survived. So you know a lot about this because you've been through it already. Sagittarius, we're getting to the end of the year now. Ruling planet is Jupiter. Sagittarius is a wanderer, the traveler. They need adventure. They need to explore things, and they need to be free, whatever free means to them. They are drawn to long distance travel. Also, education, religion, and philosophy are a way for them to explore. You may not be going physically somewhere, but they like to learn about these other areas, explore lines of thinking, and they're always searching for meaning. They're always asking really big questions about, like, why are we here? What are we supposed to do? But they're usually very optimistic. They are very restless because, again, they need to be wandering and exploring. Because of that, they do sometimes lack precision or tact. Sometimes they're being seen as too blunt because they don't really hold anything back. And they feel trapped by long-term commitments. If your moon is in Sagittarius, you need your space. You love to travel and you want to feel emotionally free. So you're not really going to let anybody else box you into anything. Mercury, Sagittarius, is very open-minded. You have a broad knowledge of the world. You're also just a lot of fun to be around. Venus, when it comes to relationship, Sagittarius isn't really looking for a romantic partner so much as they are looking for a travel companion. They want someone to share in their adventures, but they're not really looking to settle down. Mars has a restless need for adventure. They also have some restless energy, so they have a lot of energy to burn off. Jupiter, they're very broad-minded with a desire to experience everything life has to offer. So for here, explore is not a physical thing so much as it is, I'm going to explore every possibility. I want to try everything. And then Saturn, again, we could bring in the maturity here. They're not really religious in the traditional sense, but they are very spiritual. So they're not really looking for a, they don't want to be boxed in. They don't want to be, they need their space. So they're not really into organized religion, but they're very spiritual and they're always looking for answers. Capricorn, we're going from the end of the year into the beginning of the year in the Gregorian calendar that we use. Ruling planet is Saturn, which is, our parent planet here. Capricorn is very focused and hardworking. They're strategic. They're definitely very practical, and they're always professional. They're very self-reliant, and they take on responsibility for others. Capricorn always knows what they want, and they stay focused on whatever it is. They want to keep climbing and achieving. They do, have some kind of ambition here. They're very focused on what is real, and they want to earn things on their own merit. They don't want to be given anything. They want to earn whatever it is they have. And they're very focused on physical things as well. Capricorn is very organized, and they probably have a 10-year plan. This is someone who looks forward into the future and knows what they want, and then they figure out how to get it. With that, Capricorn can sometimes get trapped in their own rigid rules and obligations, and sometimes their strategy can come across as ruthlessness because they are so focused. If your moon is in Capricorn, you are someone who relies on structure and routine. You spend your time and your money wisely. Mercury, you're very goal-driven and task-focused. When it comes to Venus, you're probably looking for structure and definition in fashion and art. You're not really into, the Impressionists. You would hate Picasso. You like things to be, very organized, essentially. Mars, Capricorn will focus all of their energy on optimizing efficiency, achieving their goals. Jupiter is kind of cautious, but they have great leadership skills based on their responsibility. They take responsibility for everyone and everything. And then, we have Saturn. This is someone who believes in duty and convention. They like playing by the rules. This is kind of the opposite of what we just had with Sagittarius. They are not going to deviate from tradition. So if they are religious, they are definitely into the organized kind of religion. Aquarius, this is the other sign that people get wrong for its elements. Aquarius is a air sign. Sounds like it's water, but it's not. It has 2 ruling planets, Saturn and Uranus. Aquarius is very outgoing. They're a team player. They have a lot of social awareness and they're idealistic. The more I talk about Aquarius, you're going to see that it definitely is an earth sign, or sorry, an air sign. They look to find their place in a group, but they still want to maintain their unique vision. This is your one weird friend, the person who self-identifies as being weird. They like that they're different from everyone else. They believe in a just and enlightened society. They want to benefit to achieve, to benefit all mankind. Sorry, they want to work to benefit all mankind. They are looking for equality. They're looking for justice. All the things that we saw with Libra, but this is more about community as well. Aquarius shows a lot of rational detachment and creative expression, but they're not here for the emotions of it. They will follow the rules when they agree with them. That is the difference between Aquarius and Libra. Libra likes the rules. Aquarius is kind of going to go their own way no matter what. Their methods are very unconventional and creative. So it's probably not the same route that anyone else would take, but they're still going to get to the same destination. If you have your moon in Aquarius, you feel most at home when you are part of a larger community. Mercury, you're very logical, rational, truthful. You're looking for honest communication in everything. Venus, you value your space. And the most important thing in love is friendship. Mars, you act most effectively when defending your community or challenging injustice. So again, you might fight for yourself, but you are definitely going to stand up for the little guy. You're going to make sure that everyone has an equal chance. Jupiter, very optimistic and tolerant of others, but also kind of eclectic. And then Saturn, they take their social responsibility very seriously. And they tend to gain authority through knowledge of unconventional subjects. So they get authority because they are like the person to go to on this subject, because there's probably not a lot of people who have dedicated themselves to whatever strange, eclectic topic this person has chosen. And finally, we have Pisces. So Pisces has 2 ruling planets, Jupiter and Neptune. Pisces is all about connecting with something bigger than themselves. They want to serve a higher purpose. They want to connect with the intangible, maybe even magical. Imagination is a big thing for Pisces. They want to escape, not in the same way that Sagittarius does. They kind of want to escape the mundanity of everyday life. They want to escape the world. They're looking for something magical and interesting. They are very compassionate and devoted people. They do have a hint of martyrdom to them. Pisces is the ultimate water sign. They are so empathic and guided by their own emotions that they actually take on the emotions of them as well. So sometimes they need to take a break because they are so overwhelmed by everyone else's feelings, and they just need to be by themselves and recharge first. Pisces is fairly unfocused, but they are highly artistic, and their life and their career have to be based on some kind of creativity. This is not someone who's going to spend all day filling out spreadsheets. When you have your moon in Pisces, it's very hard to figure out how you feel because you're taking on the emotions of everyone else around you. So again, like I said, you need some time to recharge. It's actually that you need time to sit and figure out, what am I feeling versus what are the people around me feeling? that you're so empathic and tuned in other people that you actually have trouble figuring out which is which. Mercury, your imagination runs wild. You're able to transform even the most boring stories, and structure is a trap. Venus, these are very romantic people. They're really in it for the big displays. They have unrealistic expectations for romance sometimes. Mars, they're not going to fight for anyone, but they will stand up for someone else. You can kind of see a common theme here with some of these signs, but they're not going to get into a fight. They will run and hide, essentially. Jupiter, someone who dreams of running away. They want to get out of the everyday life. And similar to Sagittarius, they might use spirituality as a means of escape, as exploration again. And then Saturn, this is someone who can generally find meaning in dreams and shape them into stories, very creative, but they generally have zero sense of boundaries. And then we look at the outer planets. So again, the outer planets move very slowly. So it takes years for them to change signs. So they don't influence any specific people. They do an entire generation. So I like to look at the outer planets through history rather than what's happening now, essentially. Uranus is all about change and liberation. So here you see moments of radical change. If you look at Taurus, 1934 to 1942, the Great Depression kind of upended everything, brought about financial instability. And then in Cancer, 1949 to 1956, the family was changing. Women are entering the workforce. Things are starting to look a little bit different. And then, with Sagittarius, exploration is a big thing for Sagittarius. This was a time of a lot of air travel and exploring the world, and technology begins to unite everyone. So kind of making the world available to you, even if you don't leave home. So you can kind of track all of these. I do provide all of the slides for you at the end if you want to come back and look through these. Neptune is all about imagination and transcendence. So you can see this in big events, but also sometimes through art. So if you look at Leo, 1914, 1929, this is a time of a lot of glamour. This is your roaring 20s. They've just got out of the war. Cinema is starting up. It's a time of luxury before a big financial downturn, which is what comes with Virgo, bringing in its conservation skills, which would help people through the Great Depression. But it is also a loss of routine and order. And then Pluto is all about power and transformation. This is generally big politics kinds of things. So if we look at, let's look at Leo again, born 1937, 1958, we've got a rise of dictators and the me generation, people who are kind of focused on themselves. That's where you get the Leo parts. And then I want to point out that, so we have Virgo next, which is 1956 to 1972. Now Leo ended in 1958. How do we start in 1956? This is because the planets go retrograde. And by the way, retrograde is a verb. You can't be in retrograde. So what that means is that because of the rates that we are moving and the other planets are moving, sometimes it looks like it's moving backwards in the sky. This is more common with the outer planets, if only because they do it for longer. But every planet can retrograde, except for Earth, again. The moon can't. It's not really a planet otherwise. But you can see that the Pluto is kind of moving through the calendar. I guess I should go the other way. and they get into Leo, and then it retrogrades and goes back into Virgo. And then it's going to move forward again. So they do overlap a little bit here. This is usually big shifts in power. And then I'm going to go very briefly through the houses and kind of how to look at your chart as a whole. So if you want to take a very broad look, I mentioned that horizontal line earlier. If you're someone who has a lot of planets who are below that line, you're probably someone who's a very private life. You kind of, you approach the world kind of unconsciously, letting things come to you. If you have a lot of planets above that line, you're very focused on the rest of the world. Like you were going out into the world and finding things. And then that vertical-ish line, again, not always straight up and down. If you have a lot of things on the left, your focus is on yourself. So again, you're kind of turning your energy inwards. And then if you have it on the right, this is how you relate to other people, how you find your worth with other people. It's also how you work with other people. So where are you putting your energy again? Let's talk about houses very briefly. So houses are these little pie pieces in your chart. So you have those dark lines across and up and down. And then each of those is split into 3 pieces. And they may not be even. They're probably not even. You're always going to have 6 on the bottom, 6 on the top. So you're going to kind of use that space differently. And basically what it means is these are different areas of your life. So if we look at the first house, this is all about self and personality. If you have planets in this house, it's going to be related to first impressions. So like what people see you. Your first house, whatever's right below that dark line, is also called your ascendant or your rising sign. One of those big 3, along with the sun and the moon. So whatever your first house is your ascendant, and that is basically how the world sees you. So if I were to Google your name, what kinds of things would come up? It's also about your physical appearance and your physical body. And if we follow the chart here, counterclockwise, same as we do with the signs, it roughly follows the stages of life. It's not a time thing. So it's not going to tell you, okay, now you're moving into this part of your life, so here's what's going to happen. I do not think that astrology can really be used to predict the future. Everyone still has their own choices to make. Things aren't predetermined, but I do think of it as a good form of self-reflection, that you can identify your strengths, your weaknesses. You can see where you're putting more of your focus. So if you have a lot of planets in one area, it may not be that there's more happening in that area, it's that you have given that more attention. So for me, I have a lot in like the 9th and 10th houses. So that is focused on learning and career. And those are 2 very big things for me. You might be someone that you have a lot down towards the bottom, and home and family is bigger for you. If you look at the 2nd house, is all about possessions, money, finance. So this is less about how much money you make rather than your feelings towards money. How do you figure out worth and value? What is your approach to income? And then it's also about your material possessions. Again, how you view them. 3rd house is communication. So this is your language. It's also early education and how you relate to your siblings. So it's kind of, again, when we're young. It's all about your local environment. 4th house, home and family. This is less about the people that you are born into as it is the people you have decided are your family. So for some people, their family is a community. It's all about a desire to belong to someone. to belong to something. And home here is not about the physical place, but rather a place of belonging or a place of retreat. Fifth house, move into creativity and children. Not going to tell you how many children you're going to have or if you'll have children. It's more about your inner child. How do you express creativity? How do you, enjoy things? What are your hobbies? How do you let your inner child out? It's also about romance and risk-taking. Sixth house is health and well-being. This is basically your day-to-day. This is your routines and your rituals. It's your physical health. So this is about like, what are the things you go through in the morning? What is your approach to these things? It's also about service, which in this case means our relationship with the people that we work for or the people who work for us. So kind of your management style and how you respond to your boss's management style. Seventh house is relationships. So your seventh house is the first one on top of that line on the right. So it's considered your shadow self. Basically, it is opposite the first house. So the first house is how the world sees you. Your seventh house is more things that are part of you, but with you don't consciously identify. You don't like to accept those parts of yourself. Usually it's a form of projection that you dislike things in others because they're actually things you dislike about yourself. This is an area that I think self-reflection is very helpful using astrology because it's the area that people generally don't think about themselves because they don't want to, but it can be really helpful to learn about these things, especially because this is also the house of relationships. This is how you work with other people, and it's especially about marriage and long-term commitment. So it really helps to know those things and kind of face them, I guess. Learn to accept them or change. Again, the eighth house is intimacy and shared possessions. So if the seventh house was marriage, this is more the emotional part. This is the love, whereas the fifth house was dating. It's all about your shared resources. So if you're about to get married, maybe take a look at your fiance's chart, make sure everything looks good in the eighth house before you get that joint checking account. It's also called the house of death and transformation. It's not going to tell you how you're going to die. It's not going to tell you when you're going to die. This is more about loss and how we move on from loss. So it's change and regeneration. And again, it's not specific events. It's how you relate to those things. How do you deal with loss? How do you deal with change? How do you move on? All of those things would be related to whichever planets are in your eighth house. And maybe you don't have any planets in some of these houses, that these pie pieces might be empty. That doesn't mean that area of your life is empty. It just means that you have less influence in that area, or it's just not as much of a priority to you. So pretty much everyone is going to have empty houses because we only have so many planets to fill these 12 houses. So actually you would have at least 2 empty houses no matter what your chart looks like. So don't worry if you have those. It's just, that's not a huge priority for you. Ninth house is quest and adventure. This could be a quest for meaning. This is philosophy and religion. It's also higher education and travel and long journeys, exploration. You'll notice some of these actually, all of them actually line up with certain signs. That the ninth house is very much Sagittarius. The fifth house was Leo. And the first house is Aries. So it actually follows the same pattern regardless of where they were in the sky when you were born. 10th house is one that people care about a lot because it is your career. Again, it's not going to tell you what your job will be or how successful you will be, but it's how we approach working, what kinds of things we focus on. So maybe you are more focused on helping others, or making sure that everyone has an equal chance. Maybe you're a little bit more ambitious than that, or it's more focused on caretaking. All of that kind of fits into career. It's also how we deal with people in authority. What is our relationship to them? 11th house is friendship and community. So this is about teamwork, common goals. It's about making friends and how you relate to them and how you see them. And then the 12th house is all about something bigger than yourself. It is the universal or global more than the individual. It's a focus on community. It's a calling to a higher service, and it's kind of transcending the everyday. This, again, people, if you follow that age thing around, some people think this is the house that will tell you how or when you're going to die. These things are not in your charts. This is not predictions. It's telling you, here are the outside influences at play in this area of your life or this time of your life. That's why we read our horoscopes, that it's what's happening in the sky and how does it affect us. It's not going to determine anything for you, but it can help inform some of those decisions. That, you know, maybe it's not, okay, I need to do this today because my horoscope said so, but it's think about these things or be careful in this area. You know, don't make a big purchase or don't be rushed into a decision kind of things. So again, not predicting things. This is not the end of your life. Your 12th house is more about going beyond your individual self, which was the first house where everything's focused on you, kind of like a baby. The 12th house is looking at something bigger and becoming part of a community. So I do have a page on my website. So it's jezlehman.com/astrology. It is specifically for people who took this class. So you can't get to it from the main menu of the website, but I have lots of resources on there. Other places you might want to check out if you want to learn more, or if you want to just make your natal chart for free. I also have all of the slides for this presentation, so you can go back and check what each sign means. And then I made up some worksheets just to help you get organized.